Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. My name is Cindy Barton, and I'm the program manager of the Center for Creativity, and I am so happy to welcome you to TCC, the Center for Creativity. I don't know who's been here before. I see a lot of familiar faces. Great. First timers. Yay. We're so happy to have you here. Now, today I'm really excited because we have Tulsa Garden Center here. We have Andy and Kate, and they're going to present about how to better identify plants. So I'm going to turn it over to them in just a second, but I do want to let you know that we don't just have this workshop today. We also have another one starting at 11. And it is I Can't Sign with the Center for Individuals with Physical Challenges. So Diana Emerson, she's going to come and just teach us some really basic American Sign Language signs and talk about how it's a completely different language than English. And so if you've ever had any curiosity, or if you've ever met with a person or tried to talk to someone in a store who was deaf or hard of hearing, and they were like, you could learn some basic signs to communicate. So that'll be really fun. But I'm going to turn it over to Kate and Andy.
Thank you. As Cindy said, I'm Andy Fusco. Can everybody hear me okay, first of all? Okay. I'm Andy Fusco. I'm the Director of Horticulture at Tulsa Garden Center at Woodward Park. How many people have been to Woodward Park before? Almost everybody. Great. So at the end, I'll highlight, and you've got some materials back there about some of the fun stuff we have coming up. But when Cindy reached out to us about possibly doing a workshop here, the first thing that came to mind is one of the challenges that all us plant people have is plant identification. And it can be really intimidating as novice gardeners, novice plant people, to try to figure out what's even in your own yard. And these days, we all have tools in our pockets, and technology has come a long, long way. But if you've ever Googled something that maybe another hobby that you're in, you realize that once you Google, you can get 1,000 different answers, and sometimes it's more difficult wading through all of the information online. So I hope after today, you may not be expert plant identifiers, but you're going to have some new vocab and some new tools in your pocket so you can better cut through the noise, is what I like to say. Because just this morning, I used on an iPhone, in the camera app, when you take a picture of a plant, there's a little leaf that pops up, and you can click that, and it'll bring up what it thinks the plant is. Sometimes it's really accurate, sometimes not. And I took a photo of what we have on our tables today, and I got two wildly different answers. So maybe later today we're going to kind of dig through. I'm not going to tell you what these things are. We're going to try to figure it out. So oftentimes when you approach a plant, you see a mass of green. And we've all heard the idiom, don't miss the forest for the trees. Well, it's kind of opposite. You want to look at the trees or the parts of a plant to better identify it. So you can look at bark color, you can look at flower color, you can see if there's any fruits on here. But oftentimes the easiest thing to look at is the leaves and how the leaves are arranged on the stem. So if you'll kind of take a closer look at this guy, or gal, or them, depending on what it is, you can see here that we've got a couple things. I'm going to try to use this as well so you can see what I'm pointing at. So along the stem, of course, you have your leaves, but you also have these, which are buds. In the area that the buds are is what we call a node, and sometimes there's one bud, and sometimes there's two. And depending on the plant, sometimes those are going to produce more branches, more leaves, or more flowers. And you can see all along the stem, you've got those. Well, if you notice, right below some of these buds is where a stalk is coming out, and you've got a leaf. So actually, on this guy, that is one leaf. That is not multiple leaves. It's one leaf with multiple leaflets. And I'm jumping ahead. This is what we call a compound leaf. But The other thing that you can do is look at how they're arranged. See how at each bud, there's one leaf. And it kind of stair steps. So that's what we call alternate leaf arrangement. There's three main types of leaf arrangement. There's alternate, there's opposite, which is you would have two leaves here, or what we call whorled, which you don't see very often in trees. It's more in perennials and those types of things where you would have three or more. And then the area between the buds is called the internode. Sometimes that can come in handy with identification because certain tree species that are in the same genus or same family of trees will have longer or shorter internodes, but that's a little more advanced. So taking a leaf off, so that's one leaf, if you can believe it. Now, let's say you go to another type of tree out in a park or in your yard. How would you know that this is one leaf? What if you just had this? Any guesses? Well, it's green, yeah. Yeah, and then if you look where these leaflets are attached, there's no buds. So there's no secondary growth going to come off of that.
So in the fall, this whole thing would drop off?
Correct.
Each individual thing would
Yeah.
drop off?
And so, yeah, so the question was, how do you know if you just had the leaf that this isn't multiple leaves, that this is a single compound leaf? And the answer was that there are no buds along this petiole. We're going to find out later.
You have to stay.
Yeah. But let me see if I can show you. So I've got a woody stem off this same tree, multiple leaves. But if you can see, this right here is what we call a bud scar. It's where last year's leaf fell off, and it's just a little bit of a scar. And then moving up along, there's a bud or a leaf scar that then this year's growth is coming out of just above it. So mine don't have any fruits on them, but so I've got an alternately arranged compound leaf. So that's kind of where I'm stopped for right now. But I do want to show you, you've got a second. This may be more familiar to many of you. Okay, so now we've got our node here. And it looks like I've got two buds or two leaves. Does everybody see that? Some of you got more complex stems as well. So what would we call that? Remember, so it's not alternate, it's opposite. Now with opposite, there's kind of a trick. Most landscape trees in this part of the world are alternate. There's a little acronym called MAD horse, which are opposite. Maple, ash, dogwood, and horse chestnut. So, do you know if this is any of those? Yeah, it's some sort of maple, maples have very distinct leaves. But is this a compound leaf? It's what we call a simple leaf. So there are no leaflets. It's just one mass of leaf along the axil. Yeah. Oh, yeah, mad horse. So maple, ash, dogwood, horse chestnuts. Now, in everything in science, there's always going to be exceptions to that, but that's a quick rule of thumb when you're out in a park or in your garden and you see a tree. So this isn't for all plants, but for trees, woody trees. If you see opposite, you're in the right ballpark with those. Okay, so we figured out our leaf arrangement. Now, so this is what's fun about botany, is there's ways to classify and identify everything. So you also have a little handout that'll help on your table. We can also look at what we call shape or venation, the way those veins are arranged on the leaves. So I like maples. So if you're familiar with Japanese maple, the scientific term for Japanese maple, the scientific name is Acer, which is all maples, palmatum, which is Japanese maple, because their leaves are like a palm. Well, just like that, this is what we call palmate venation, that top one on your handout. We also have pinnate venation, and those are going to be your two most common ones. So pinnate is like this tree. So this leaflet has pinnate venation, where it has the single vein going up through it, and then it shoots off, usually at an angle. You also have parallel, which is not common in trees. There's one tree that has parallel venation. It's the ginkgo. So if you're familiar, that's this leaf right here. And it says dichotomous, but it also has parallel venation. But most grasses, things in that type of family, lilies, grasses, those are all going to have parallel venation. Yeah. So, let's see. So let's say that we're out in the forest or in a park, and, we can't all take our clippers and clip things and take them home. If everybody that came to Woodward Park did that, we would not have a park left. So sometimes you need other tools to then go home and study what you may have found. So that's where leaf rubbing can be really fun. And you've got crayons and a journal on your table. And we're going to take one of our leaves, and we've also got some other fun types of leaves, some variety that we're going to pass around. An extra paper, so don't feel like you're limited to just this. Make sure I got myself centered here. I'm going to put the leaf down, cover it up, and then let's see. Kate's better at this than I am. She's more of the artist, but I'm taking my crayon horizontal. You can already see how much better some of that venation and stuff is showing up. My leaf moved a little bit. Then I'm going to do showed up much better. I'm going to walk around. So all of these leaves came out of our arboretum. So an arboretum is a collection of trees and other woody ornamental plants for scientific study. So like when I was in school, we would take field trips to our arboretum to study different species of plants, identifying and all of that. And so all of these leaves came out of that arboretum. So I would kind of like you all to make some rubbings, look at them, take your best guess, and then come visit us. All of our trees in the Arboretum have plaques in front of them that identify what they are, and see if you can kind of, use what you learned here today to make guesses in the field, like we say in horticulture. And again, these are skills that it's one of those things, the more you do, the better you're going to get. And you're going to look at things differently. I still come across things in the park that I don't know what they are. But as I've done this more, I can look at, compound leaf, this arrangement, the flowers or nuts or seeds look like this. And I can usually get pretty close in terms of, it's probably in this family of plants. And feel free to take out your phones and see how your phones are doing with identifying this. There's no such thing, Amber. You know that.
So if I was going to go leaf rubbing, like you said, at Woodward, so that I can better understand this, do I first determine the structure as alternates?
So we're...
that are simple, and
Yeah.
then take a note, and
Yeah.
then, do my leaf rub?
Yeah, so if I was... Okay. So the question was, so if I'm taking this journal out into the field, what type of other notes should I take so that when I get back home, I have all the information? So you're probably going to want to note, because what you're going to have in the rubbing is your venation and your leaf shape, and as I'm going to show you here in a little bit, the leaf margin, which is the edges and the shape of the edges. But you're going to want to note anything you can't take with you. So is there a flower color? What's the leaf arrangement? If it's in the fall, what color was the fall color? Because sometimes that can come in really handy. Yeah. So I don't know what model. Yeah, so take the photo. Okay, Kate's going to show, yeah, because usually right where that I button is where it, there it goes.
I got it.
And then look up plants. Yeah. Does everybody have plenty of leaves? So let's do this one.
Okay.
So I've got a leaf here from the Arboretum, and Kate's going to show us, she's going to take a picture. And I would imagine Androids also have this. The technology's gotten much better, but I just know it on the iPhone. So if you see in the center, she had an eye, and it put a little leaf on it. And then look up plant. And this tree specifically is what we call a tulip tree, Liriodendron tulipifera, which is it's related to poplars, and it's a tulip poplar. It has a very distinct leaf. I think it almost looks like a dinosaur footprint. But let's just do what we did this morning or earlier. So Kate, if you'll do the same thing, I'm gonna, if you can try to get a full leaf in the photo. Doesn't want to do it?
Do it.
Here, let's just pretend we've got something laying on the ground.
Doesn't do it. But
So she's pressing that I for info,
Mm-hmm.
and then highlight, pressing down and highlighting.
yes, so sorry guys. So what I'm doing right here is I'm trying to, it maybe got it. So down here at the very bottom, there's this eye. And so right here it's showing look up neem tree.
Okay.
So that's
So-
where it's showing it.
So let's.
If you guys, can we do another quick cool technology?
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of nerdy. This has,
Here.
but
Speak into the mic.
sure. So what you can do right here is you hold on to this as it's doing its different color. Oh, wait. I want to show you guys how to make a little sticker. So you can make stickers of leaves. And right here, I'm adding a sticker. Anyway, that's why it's looking white around there. So now I have some friends that we send flowers and other leaves to each other. It's really cool. All the cool botany people do it.
So plants and technology, 2 for 1 today. So what came up on Kate's phone with this tree, how many of us are gardeners and are familiar with neem oil? You ever heard of neem oil? It's an organic pesticide, and so it comes from a tree called the neem tree. I'm going to look up neem tree because it's not going to be in our Oklahoma forestry books. But so let's say you did that and you're like, oh, I've got a neem tree in my backyard. That's interesting. I've never heard of that. Well, I'm going to go to Wikipedia. And it's native to Southeast Asia, Indian subcontinent. Okay, well then it's probably not a neem tree, but branches are wide and spreading. Pinnate leaves. Okay, so it's on the right track because we said that the leaves were pinnately, the venation was pinnate. The terminal leaflet is often missing. Okay, so that's something I didn't cover. So often in compound leaves, especially when they're pinnately compound like this, will be either odd or even pinnate. So, which means basically they have an odd guy out at the top. Well, that just said the neem tree is usually even. It's usually missing one. So we're not neem tree. Now, when I did this morning, it also came up with, it didn't get me to a species, but it got me to a family of trees called the walnuts. Does anybody have fruit or nuts that are growing on yours? Can I come borrow that? Yeah, I'll just grab this one. Thank you. So I'm going to prune away these leaves so you can see. Now, as we're doing this, as we're identifying leaves, we're also aware of where we are in the year. It's June 1st, so we're using all of that knowledge that we have to know that, okay, so this tree is flowered and it's putting on fruit, but that's probably not a mature size. So that's got more room to grow. And so we put some resources on your table. They're all different, so you're not going to have what I'm showing you, but I just want to kind of give you a toe dip into the world of botany. And so I've got this book here. This is what I used in a graduate level botany course. So this is pretty advanced even for the home gardener, but I just want to show you how deep you can go. And this book has things by category. And so I'm going to go to fruits. So as you can see, botanists get very, very specific. I thought it had... Okay, hold that thought. Okay. So, I'm jumping ahead, but I've got large round top tree, yellowish green catkins appear with foliage in the spring. So those are those long frilly things that drop on your car. Alternate, odd, pinnately compound leaves, 10 to 20 inches long, 9 to 17 leaflets. How many leaflets do we have on that guy? Okay. So with all of this information, knowing that this is a tree that can grow in Oklahoma, does anybody have a guess of what this is? It's a pecan, yeah. Well done. But as you can see, there's different ways to go about this. And so as a novice, as an average person, nowadays your phone's going to be the best option. But if you get really into this, there's all kinds of books where you can really learn the botany terms and really get down to the nitty-gritty details and use what we call a dichotomous key. Is anybody familiar with that in the room? Okay. Yes. So this should be a fairly simple one. So a dichotomous key is literally a pick your own adventure type of thing that gets you down to the species level, and they have them for all different types of organisms. And so this one is just a key for leaf margin types, and I'm not going to get in super detail because it confuses me even sometimes, but you start with the top level that'll basically be like compound leaf or simple leaf. Okay, compound leaf, go to page 3. You go to page 3, and it's even pinnately or odd pinnately. Odd pinnately, go to page 7. And you go all the way down, and you'll get to a species level. And so on one of the tables, there's an orange book that's the Oklahoma Field Guide. And if you just flip through that, you can see how in excruciating detail, it's that one right there, yeah, that you can go. But if this is stuff that interests you, all you need is terminology. All you need is a little bit of a closer look. And that's really my goal here today, is hoping that by seeing the differences in this leaf versus this leaf, it opens your eyes to then go, wait, that's not just a tree. Let's look at that bark. Now, I always have to say this at all these types of things. Don't do this when you're driving. I had professors tell me that, and I was like, that's so silly. And then here I am, what is that? But I'll just show you, for example. I just flipped to a leaves, subsessile bases clasping, blades thick and firm, veins of axial surfaces conspicuously raised, pale. That's botany. That's, if you're really into it and you really want to know what something is, this is what the experts are using to get down, sometimes to the microscopic level, to figure out what things are. But backing up, we don't have to know all of this to make infer guesses about the plants in our own yard. Well, and why do we want to know what's in our yard? Well, we want to be able to better take care of our plants, right? So we want to know if we have a pecan that's going to, take a little bit more root damage if we have a new deck going in, or if it's, a maple that's probably towards the end of its life, and we may not want it hanging over the house, where the new nursery is being painted, So the better able we are to identify the plants in our yard, the better we are to take care of them. So that's kind of the overarching umbrella for all of this. Are there any questions? I know we've covered a lot. We've jumped around, and it's a big, big topic. So I want to be sure that... So those are the fruits. So there was a flower, then it got pollinated, and then that's the little itty-bitty pecan that will turn in by the end of the fall into a... And then, and the squirrels get them, Or people. Pecan is a big cash crop. It's our native nut tree here in Oklahoma. Usually in the fall, I think, they're always getting the sidewalk really dirty when we do our big event, Wine and Roses, at the end of September, and they're not quite ripe yet. So all of that's in the same family, and so they're all going to be kind of in that area. Yes?
So I cheat and I use a plant finder app.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know if it's right? Sometimes it's like,
So the question is, using some sort of plant finder app, how do you know if it's right? Well, it's really a matter of using all your knowledge, cross-referencing, and depends on what your use is. If you're debating on whether it's a walnut tree or a pecan tree, your care of those trees if you don't get it exact, it's probably going to be pretty similar. But if you're out in the woods and you rub up against something, and is it poison ivy or is it Virginia creeper? Like if I'm not 100% sure, I'm just not going to touch it. And that's a common one. So it's like with anything. It's the people at the garden center that have really drilled this into me are the mycology folks, the mushroom folks. And they're always preaching that if you don't know for sure 100% on ID, don't consume it. Don't post it on Facebook and trust the guy behind his keyboard saying, yeah, that's edible. You've got to know yourself. So it's all a matter of what is your use and what are you doing with it. Save your plant tags if you're a gardener. I can't tell you how many times that's come in handy. You pull the plant tag out, stick it in an envelope, stick it in your seed box, and you think, why am I saving this? And then 3 years later, what was that? So those things really help too, especially then if you're bringing somebody in to work on your yard or whatever. Knowing what things are comes in super handy. Yes, sir.
Just curious, the back of these maple leaves, they have these brown structures along the veins. Are those,
Yeah, let's look.
is that a disease or a breathing hole?
So he was asking, I don't know if it's showing up on here, on the back of this maple leaf. Can you see it, kind of? Those little brown dots? So I don't know for sure, but my guess is that some sort of insect has come along there and put its little proboscis into the vein to suck out the sugars. It's probably harmless, but yeah. Well, it's definitely harmless to humans, but whether it's going to take out the tree, probably not. I had something else fun up here. I don't know what happened to it. So, oh yeah, 'tis the season for these guys. These came off the bald cypress right out here. Anybody recognize that guy? Yeah, so it's a bagworm. So we've got tent caterpillars, webworms, and bagworms, and they often get misidentified. So tent caterpillars and webworms live up in the canopy. People often want to burn them. Don't burn them. You can spray them with a hose. And the difference between those is where they're at. They're either at the branch crotches, where the branches come in, or at the tips of the branches. Bagworms form these little bags, and this is actually really tiny. They can get to be like this. And then later in the summer, you'll see them hanging, and they make their little bags out of whatever they've eaten. And he's probably too small, but if I plucked him off and set him on your table, he'd crawl around. So the best course of action for those guys is to pick them off and put them in a bucket of like soapy water and put a lid on it, throw it in the trash can. They're pretty harmless. Year after year, they can really hurt a tree, especially evergreen trees. So that's the bag. He was chewing on that. Sometimes he'll stick his little head out. He's probably too spooked. So he was hanging like this. But in bad years, they'll even cut on maples and oaks and all of that kind of stuff. You can also treat them with BT, which is a technically organic pesticide called Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a bacteria that will harm caterpillars. It cuts up their insides and they die. But it will harm all types of caterpillars. So if you're also growing like a butterfly garden with milkweed, you don't want to spray BT because it'll hurt the monarchs as well.
This was a really fun experiment Andy and I did earlier this year. Andy picked a bunch of bagworms, kind of gross, I know, and we put it inside one of the old like hermit crab little cases, like a little fish tank, and we just left it alone, and you could see them moving and coming out all over. So it was really interesting to watch how active they are, and honestly, I sent my niece and nephew some videos. It's creepy, but it's really cool to understand them. Yeah, cool, creepy.
And again, most people don't even notice them until you do, and then they're all over. And normally by the time you notice. But that's another thing about looking closer at your plants. You're going to notice these things much easier. And there's a lot of places in our teaching garden that we don't have irrigation, and so we still have to hand water. And part of that's just, it's just easier. We don't have the irrigation. We don't have the money to put in the irrigation. But there's also one of the things about hand watering is that sometimes when you irrigate your yard, you think, oh, it's fine. It irrigated this morning, and I'm not going to go out there. It's 100 degrees. But if you have to go out there and hand water, and you're slowly moving through your garden, you're noticing things as you water. So there can be a lot of benefits to keeping a closer eye and seeing things differently. So that's pretty much all the formal programming. So I was just going to run through some, unless you all have questions, there's just, I could go on and on about all the different resources on your tables, tons of botany resources. If you're interested in botany vocabulary, this is the book I would recommend you all buying. Not so much this, unless you're going into school for botany and this kind of stuff. But this is a really accessible botanist vocabulary. So I bought this kind of on my own when I was in school because some of that is just a little too much. There's also a lot of these things when you're at state parks and whatnot. Oklahoma Trees and Wildflowers, where it's got a quick picture of the tree form, and then what the pines and pine cones or leaf and fruits look like. And so at any time of year, you can kind of look at that. And that's where the tree form can come in really handy. We didn't cover that today because we didn't have full trees to bring into the classroom. But sometimes even just whether it's more upright, like this pine, or what we call decurrent, where it's just kind of a rounded shape like you would draw as a kid, can tell you whether something is a conifer, so it produces cones, or if it's a deciduous fruit flowering tree. What else is nice on here? We also kind of use the same format on our new tree shirts. So all the shirt that Kate's wearing is all trees from our arboretum. Arboretum's undergone quite an extensive renovation. It was an original project of Tulsa Garden Center. It's kind of back. Sometimes it's been called the dog park because it used to be kind of tucked away and people could let their dogs. Your dogs need to be on a leash in Woodward Park, but that's another story. Yeah. But it's an 1.5 acre collection of trees that grow, and they grow right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So you can come and see trees and at their mature height, and like hackberry. Most people are familiar with hackberries growing up along the fence, but hackberries are actually quite a majestic and beautiful tree if they have the space to grow. So you can come see a 60-year-old hackberry. We also have 4 state champions. So the Oklahoma Forestry Office keeps records of the biggest trees in Oklahoma. And so we have 4 trees that of that species are the biggest in Oklahoma. So that's really cool. Yes.
Do you guys do tours where people can learn?
Yeah, we often do tree walks. So we had one during Oklahoma Arbor Week at the end of March. And we do a lot of that stuff with our managing partners of the space, Up With Trees. So they have a really cool tree walk coming up, not in Woodward Park, but their former director of operations, Mike Perkins, who's also on our board and has been in the horticulture tree world, used to be your city's forester. He's doing a tree walk at his own property. So if you get on Up With Trees' website, you can sign up for that. That's coming up like next week. So that's really cool. He's got a space out in Sand Springs in the Cross Timbers Forest, which Oklahoma is really cool and situated in that we're so close to the Cross Timbers, which is an ecosystem unlike anything else in the world. So, yes.
I was going to ask, we've heard a lot about the climate zone shifting. What plants are you seeing that in, and are you seeing it in trees yet? I would think trees might be the last to shift what grows well here and what's maybe not surviving so well here as we get hotter.
Yes, so the question was about the USDA climate hardiness zone shifting. And so growing up in Tulsa, we've always been kind of on the cusp of 6B, 7A, which means that our average coldest temperature is about 0 degrees. Well, if you've been in Tulsa, and it's based on cold temperature, it's not based on heat. They have a separate map for heat that's fairly new that I don't reference all that much. But they've shifted us to more 7A, 7B, which would mean our average coldest temperature is 5 degrees or 10 degrees. And I think that's probably all fair. I trust the USDA is using hard data and all of that. But if you've been in Oklahoma the past few winters, we've had winters where we've dropped considerably. So I'm not going to start planting Zone 8 plants because a plant nerd, I'm always pushing it a little even warmer. But for trees, those winters can show stress. And the hard part about trees is you're not going to see that stress until maybe 2-3 seasons down. And so regular deep waterings for your trees is very important. Trees in your yard and all of that's a whole other concept. It's too big for today. But I don't see it shifting in terms of what we can plant is the short answer of that. But the heat and extreme colds just means our plants are even more stressed, and that just is another avenue for pest and disease. And so regularly consulting with a certified arborist on your trees is always my top recommendation. We have just a few minutes left, so I want to make sure I highlight some of the wonderful things that we're doing at the Garden Center. Our mission is horticulture education, so this is kind of what we do on a day-to-day basis. If you haven't already, on your way out, grab one of these flyers. It has all our upcoming events and workshops. We've got some really fun stuff coming up. And then grab a newsletter. We're really proud of these. We do these quarterly. We have a brand new one coming out Monday. This is the last one. So all the events in here are outdated, but you can kind of see what we do. And most importantly, what our communications manager was really proud of, see a whole timeline of Woodward Park. If you've been in Tulsa for any length of time, you probably have a Woodward Park story. And so that's part of our story. And so we collect those, and we're really proud of what we get to do in such a cool, important place for Tulsa. So happy to answer more questions as people are mingling out. But thanks for being here today. It's always good to see other plant nerds in Tulsa. So thank you.